All right, so today I am going to focus on visualizations in Minitab, and I just want to verify really quickly, Megan, can you see Minitab now on my screen?
Yes.
You're good. Okay. So I have 3 college-age students, actually, one going to graduate school in the fall, one in graduate school, and one in undergrad. So I have a really good set of college student beta testers on my end. And one of the things I asked my son was, what kind of things college students were interested in, because I wanted to come up with some fun things that we could look at. And one of the responses I got was, well, college students seem to be obsessed with squirrels for whatever reason. So today we're going to do a little bit with squirrel data. This particular data set does come from New York City's data. New York City did a squirrel census for real in 2018. So we're going to look at the New York City squirrel census with the latest version of Minitab. Now, one thing you might notice, the latest version of Minitab right here is actually a web application. So you can run Minitab on a Mac with no problem. You can run it on PC. The easiest way to run Minitab these days is running Minitab via the web. So that's what I'm going to do. In terms of questions, I will run through my first example, and then I'll have time for people to ask questions, and then we'll go to my second example. So last week, this was really exciting for me. Minitab brought in the Minitab Graph Builder, and that's what we're going to highlight as we look at these visualizations. So this is the Minitab Graph Builder, and what you can see here is that, got all kinds of things going on the screen here. We could see that there's a gallery, a Minitab Graph Builder gallery that we can look at, and let me move this out of the way. In that, it gives us some ideas of the sort of graphs we might want to look at. And as I said earlier, this particular data set happens to be data sets on squirrels that live in Central Park. This is real data. They did a real squirrel census back in 2018. And so as I was starting to just kind of look at this data, I threw in an X, I threw in a Y, and already I have something that intrigued me. So as I populate with different variables into this space in the graph gallery, I actually can see over here different potential graphs of this data. But the one that really intrigued me was this one, the binned scatter plot. So a binned scatter plot is particularly useful as data sets get bigger. In general, the binned scatter plot is going to let me look at data that might be larger data and bin it kind of like a histogram does, but it will give me hotspots based on sample size. The reason why this particular bin scatter plot was interesting to me is this bin scatter plot is Central Park. So if you actually went to Google Maps and you looked up a map of Central Park, you would see that it is shaped like this kind of, it's not a north-south, it's kind of goes at a horizontal. And then here in the middle of Central Park is a reservoir, the Jackie Kennedy Onassis Reservoir, I believe. Well, it turns out that our squirrel sighters did not see any squirrels in here in the reservoir in Central Park. So there's no counts in here. There are a few other places that have a fair amount of water where there are empty squirrel counts. But most importantly, if you're a New Yorker or just a college student that is obsessed with squirrels, as I hear many of them are, I can actually go and hover over hotspots. And I see right here, we have a squirrel hotspot in Central Park. Another squirrel hotspot is this bright red area down here. And then the blue areas up here, there were less squirrels on this end of Central Park, as you can see, as I hover over each of these little squares, which is how they divided up the park for the squirrel census. I can see places where squirrels were not as prevalent. I can see, again, spaces in the red where we had a lot of squirrels. So just kind of a fun way to see a scatter plot. The XY coordinates are the longitude and latitude coordinates of Central Park, and the numbers that correspond as I hover over them are the number of squirrels in that area. For other large data sets, it works the same way, meaning you'll get as your gradient here, your colors here are related to the number of observations in a particular area on the graph. So this works really, really nicely for larger data sets. Now let's go back and look at our squirrels a little bit more, get some more squirrel information because I'm sure you have questions. So I'm going to go ahead and reset this now. And I'm interested in a few more things about my squirrel. One thing I was interested in was if I look at the age of the squirrel, I can add age as a variable. And I see really quickly over here that the ages were really just question mark. They couldn't tell adult or juvenile. So in a simple heat map of the squirrel, I can see basically how many of each type of squirrel I have. In this case, I had 2,568 adult squirrels and 330 juvenile squirrels. So I didn't have an even number of squirrel counts across categories. But something else I might want to do with this is look at some of these other variables related to the age of the squirrel. So for perhaps the location of the squirrel depends on its age. One of my hypotheses was if I had an adult squirrel, were they more likely to be sighted above ground or below or on the ground? So I was really curious about adult and juvenile squirrels and wondering if juvenile squirrels were more likely to be flying in the trees, whereas adult squirrels were more likely to be sitting on the ground. So let's find out. I can use a heat map, or actually I'm going to use a bar chart. And now I'm going to do a few things with this bar chart just to make it a little more interesting. So here we've got age. And then if we look at a second bar chart over here, we see location. But now I want to combine these two categories into a single bar chart. I can do that by just saying instead of separate graphs, I want to overlay these variables. And now I see them overlaid in the combinations of categories. Don't love that. I actually, when I look at categories together, especially if I just have two categories, my preference would be this one, a stacked bar chart. But I can move between different visualizations of that bar chart using those two categories over here. And this is the one I'm going to pick. I like this graph. I'll go ahead and create it. So now we have our bar chart of squirrel age and location. And let me zoom my, hopefully the screen sharing will still work. Yep, if I zoom a little bit so I have a little more screen space. Here we can see the adult squirrels are in the red. I can take them out. I can look at the juvenile squirrels, and I see that juvenile squirrels, proportionally, there were 168 juvenile squirrels in here, or sorry, 123 squirrels were above ground of the juvenile squirrels. If I want to look at adult squirrels by themselves, I can choose the adult squirrels and get rid of the others. So I can leave out some of these categories here. I just left out the missings, and I'm gonna leave out the question marks. So I can just look at adult versus juveniles on here. I'm not sure my hypothesis was completely right. It's a little bit hard to tell, but I was thinking maybe the juveniles spent more time above ground than the adults. So just kind of a fun thing to play with. We'll add back in the ones we weren't sure that were missing values. And again, you can hover and include and exclude different groups just by interacting with this, which I think is really fun. So I can take out groups just by clicking on the legend and see them go away. Okay. So now let's try another one. We'll go to Graph Builder. I was also curious about how squirrels interact with the spotters, the people watching the squirrels. I'm going to reset this. And one of the things they did in this squirrel census was they looked at what the squirrels did when they saw people. So the squirrels tended to either approach the people. So we'll put in approaches. They were indifferent to people. Indifferent. or they ran from people. So here's another way, or another question I had about the squirrels. This time I'm going to use a heat map to answer that question. And so I'll choose the heat map. I can change things around if I want to. I'm just going to create it as is. And now I can see, well, most squirrels, I'll hover over this, fell into the indifferent category. So they were neither approachable, they didn't run, they just didn't care that the humans were there. So I find that kind of interesting. Now, there were 780 squirrels that did none of the above. They didn't approach people, they didn't run from them, they weren't indifferent. So I'm not sure what that meant. The squirrels that were kind of the fewest squirrels, I would say, were ones that did it all. They approached and then they ran away, and then at some point they looked indifferent. So they had a combination of all of those behaviors. But again, important to note that most squirrels were actually indifferent to the humans around. If you're concerned about squirrel and squirrel indifferences, or afraid they might approach you, here's the category where they were approaching people, not running from them, or indifferent to people. So there were 143 of these squirrels that were quite approachable. Okay. And let's do another, answer another question here in squirrel behavior. One of the things they were really interested in this particular study was what the squirrels looked like. So here's another heat map that shows us the categorization of squirrel, how squirrels looked. So we can see that most of the squirrels, not surprisingly, were gray squirrels. So 895 of all of our squirrels were gray squirrels. We also have gray squirrels with cinnamon highlights, was the second most popular category. So gray squirrels and gray squirrels with cinnamon highlights. That's what most of our squirrels are. In Central Park, the next most common would be gray with white highlights. So you can see the various colors, combinations of the Central Park squirrels. Okay. And then last, how were they actually spending their time? Not just so much about what they were doing in terms of how they were interacting with people. We can also look and see, were the squirrels running? Were they chasing, climbing, eating, foraging, or doing other activities? I'm going to leave the other out and just look at the ways squirrels were spending their time as when they weren't indifferent to humans, or when they were indifferent to humans, probably because they tended to be at the same time, they tended to be foraging. So that's how most squirrels spend their time in Central Park. Now I'm going to stop for a second. I mentioned at the beginning, I can take questions. So I do have another example we'll look at, but before we move to the other example, are there any questions? You can enter them in chat and Megan will read them.
And please let me know if you have any questions. Here we go. Our first question is, how do you change the color scale?
On the heat maps in particular, there are a couple options. One is if I go down to my gradient type, this is the easiest way. I'm going to go, I can do sequential from highest to low and just keep them all blues, or I can do sequential from high to low, low to high, etc. So that's really the gradient in the color scheme on a heat map. Now, some of these graphs, we've actually moved to a different type of graph. They're more interactive. That does mean they have a little bit less options in terms of decoration. So when you change colors in graphs, that's called decorating a graph. These are more interactive. They have less options for decorating. But all of the regular Minitab graphs are still here too. So I can also, for example, reproduce that bar chart. And if I'm using Minitab desktop, then I have all the options that we previously had for colors and graphs. There is less on the web and a little bit less in Graph Builder, which is available both on desktop and the web. But yeah, if you want full control over colors, you'll use the Minitab desktop version. Yep.
Okay, yeah, so I think that answers that question. With the newer version, can I specify custom colors using a hex code. So if they're using the desktop version, that would be correct, right?
They can get
Okay.
in, yeah, to specify colors there. Yeah.
Okay. And then another question that was asking about their school has a site license for Minitab. Are there data sets available for class use?
Yeah, so there are a couple things. One is on minitab.com, there's actually a whole set of lessons available. So you can go to minitab.com for some of the lessons, and those include data sets. In addition, when you're in Minitab and you're in any of these tools in Minitab, when you click help, help will always have data sets corresponding to it. So it's going to teach you how to do whatever it is you're doing. And then we provide the data sets for you to use as well. So if I go to maybe not this particular help topic, sorry about that. But yeah, we have in Minitab help a whole bunch of data sets available. So we have a data set library in particular where you can download the data sets directly from the Minitab data set library. So here I can just download all of them.
So another question is someone who's new to Minitab and asking if you can open from Excel.
Yes, we made it very easy to open from Excel. So hang on, I got to get out of this and back over to, oh, I know what I did. I am, let me go back to another, hang on. Technology is great when it works. Go to Google. Okay. In Minitab, this is the online version of Minitab. If I have this available, I have a minitab.com account with Minitab statistical software available to me. I'll let it open. To open from Excel, all I need to do is open, and I can open a Minitab worksheet from OneDrive, Google Drive, or local drive. So I can save Excel files for my students, and that's fine. It's going to open on OneDrive. And for example, the next data set that we're going to look at is right here. Amusement. We'll open the amusement park data. That's an Excel file, and there it is. So yeah, it's just considered a Minitab worksheet, and you can easily open it.
Would you like to continue with the questions or come back to them after you do the example? There's
I'll do one more example, and then we'll do some more questions. We'll just go back and forth.
Okay, sounds good.
The reason why I wanted to do this example, this is wait times in amusement park. The last example had a lot of categorical data. This one has more of a mix of continuous and categorical data. So going back into Graph Builder, I'm going to go ahead and just select all of my variables. And what I'm going to do is, I'll select all of them and pull them all over, because now I've got kind of a mix of continuous and categorical, not too many variables at once, but it lets me kind of see what sort of things I might want to look at. And we get a lot of different options up here. I am going to start with a histogram, and I'm really just going to focus on the histogram of wait time this time. There are a bunch of histograms in here because it did all the different combinations of categorical and continuous variables. They're all in here. But I'm going to focus on maybe just wait time by what kind of ride it was, or I could focus on just wait time even by itself. So there are some pretty neat histograms in here that I can look at. Here's wait time on a weekend with the different types of thrill rides. We can see that the thrill rides are yellow. They have the highest wait times. Moderate rides have kind of in between wait times, and the gentle rides had the shortest wait times. So there's one I can look at. I can, if I click the create button, I will actually see the graphs in full scale. Now, if I want to go back to my graph gallery, what about if I wanted to maybe look at my data over time? Well, here's my wait time data over time. I'm going to go ahead and create this one. And what we see, oops, wants to know if I want to save my project. Sorry, I didn't really need to save my project. I'm going to say close that. It's on the cloud, right? So they want to save the project. So here are just my wait times over time. my park attendance over time, some of my other variables over time. So I can look at several variables over time at once and see how they move, which is a nice way to look at data. Now I have my a laptop today, so I don't have a huge screen, but you can see a lot more on your screen with a larger computer or larger screen. Right, so there we can do a little time series plot of that. And I'm going to go back in and see what other graphs might look interesting to me. Another one that we've created is that's newer is the Correllogram. So those of you who teach regression know how important that Correllogram can be to determine your correlations between variables. So in my Correllogram, I'm not going to worry about the the categorical variables. So I'm just going to take those out over here and just create a Correllogram, heard it pronounced different ways, a Correllogram of my continuous variables. So once again, let's zoom this, and I can actually see the correlation between the variables. Ticket sales and park attendance, for example, are very highly correlated. One of the things that was a little surprising to me was temperature and the amount of sun showing was not correlated at all, although you would almost expect it to be. But percent, whether it was a sunny day or what percent of the day was sunny, ends up not being overly correlated with anything, and it's not correlated with temperature, which surprised me a little bit. But we can go through and look at various correlations here with wait time. Wait time's the bottom variable here, and it looks like park attendance is the most correlated observation with wait time. So we'll do one more here, and then I'll spend the rest of the time taking more questions. So if I go back in, again, I'm going to add all of these just so I can, oops, sorry about that, new computer too. I'm going to drag them all over and look at this. Let's do the maybe the scatter plot. Here's a start of a scatter plot that might be interesting with this data. We know that wait time and park attendance are the two most important. So I'm going to not worry about some of the others right now. And I'll just do a scatter plot, take out some of the ones I don't need to look at. And then I've got a group variable of ride rating. I like that. And I'm going to just remove some of these other variables. I could have also just added each variable by itself and looked at it. But when you don't have a ton of variables, it's kind of easy to just throw them all in and then take out the ones that you don't want. But here we have the gentle ride ratings. Again, were the ones with the lowest wait times down here. And the I can take them out and just focus on one set if I want. Here are the thrill rides. Here are the moderates, and here are the gentles. So stay away from the thrill rides if you want to reduce your wait time, and stay away from busy days. Not too surprising. All right, so let's go back. We have a couple more minutes. Were there some additional questions?
I have a question. At what stage did you put the data here in order to analyze? I only see that you check like 7 temperature, park attendance, but I never saw any data plug in here to analyze that. Yeah.
So I opened an Excel file, and there's my data. So it's in a spreadsheet, just like it would be in Excel. And then in the graph builder, it recognizes what columns are in that spreadsheet. They're over here on the left. So I just grabbed them and moved them over. So it is recognizing all of the columns in my spreadsheet. If, like in a scatter plot, it knows it's Y variable, or when I added them, it actually recognized which variables were categorical and which ones were numeric when it picked out what it put in for X's and Y's.
Thank you.
Okay, our next question was, I've used Minitab on a PC and on a Mac. The last rollout had significantly less functionality on the Mac version than the PC. Will the rollout be the same on both the Mac and the PC?
So to be honest, we're moving more and more people on the Mac onto the online version. And it's just really so that we can get as much in as short a time as possible. So the online version is, you can use on a Safari browser, you can use on Mac or PC. We have not updated the Mac version, so that one's still the Minitab Express, which was released I don't even remember which release, sorry. Yeah, but we'll be adding, and at the same time, that's one nice thing about moving online, it'll be the same experience for all students.
Speaking of the web version, will the copy paste bug be fixed soon?
I don't have time. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they've fixed. It depends what copy paste bug they're talking about. I'm not on the bug review team, but anything important, that's another thing we can do very quickly is we can put updates on the web version much faster than we can distribute updates on a desktop version. So I don't know that specific bug, but if it's important and it's logged, it may already be fixed.
And then can the faculty get a free trial to Minitab?
The best way to get answers for that, I'll just put up this, is because I don't work in sales either, is to contact academic sales at minitab.com and they'll get back to you right away about what's available for you. Yep. By the way, I didn't say this when I started. I work in Minitab R&D, so I can tell you a lot about statistics. I've done a lot of teaching, but I don't work in the sales department. So, other questions?
Yes. So what version has the graph builder? 20 only or 19 as well?
Actually, it's the third version of 20. So the other thing that's changing a whole lot in the software industry is just like every, Microsoft products and many other products, we're putting out much more frequent releases. They're smaller, but frequent releases. So Graph Builder this is hot off the presses. It became available last week for Minitab 20.3. So it'd be an update to Minitab 20, and then as well as online. If you're using the student versions on the hub, they would be updated with Graph Builder as well. But this just came out last week to what we call a slipstream or an update to Minitab 20.
And how do you import data sets in CSV files?
Same way I brought it in as Excel. You can just do a worksheet open. So it's pretty easy. You're just gonna, let me get out of here. Choose File, Open, and then what you want to open is a worksheet. A project is really a Minitab file, but open worksheet, and it'll just automatically import CSV. Yeah, both CSV, Excel, Minitab worksheets, etc.
Okay, so our next question, does it contain forecasting tools for time series data?
Yes. So one nice thing about this Minitab web version over what used to be Minitab Express, it has all of Minitab pretty much. So I'm super excited about all these commands being added. Yeah, this is a huge update if you're moving from the old Mac version to here.
Great, great. And then could you demo copying data from like a website, copy paste, like students would do in a homework problem?
Yeah, they should. Copy paste is, as far as I know, it should still work like you'd expect. I don't actually have a data set on a website handy, so I can't easily do that. If it's not working right for you, though, I would recommend just calling Minitab technical support. If you go to our website, you can look up support, and the phone number will be right there, and you can contact them.
Cheryl, it's Christine.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah,
Hi.
In and answer a couple of the pieces here. Copy paste, as far as I know, it's not a bug. It's a feature that they're working on adding into the online version. And last I checked, it currently has not been added into the online version. But like Cheryl was talking about, one of the benefits is that you can add things on the fly, just like Graph Builder was added on the fly. And it is one of the more popular requests for a feature that gets put in sooner rather than later. So last I saw, the copy paste feature was not active in the online version. If you do have the Microsoft Windows version on your computer, you can use that, and you can toggle between at any given time. You can log out of the web version and log into the Windows version, but it is limited only to Windows. Also, the question about getting a trial, if you go to our website, just go to minitab.com. If you click on Minitab, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a green button that says free trial. And you go in there and you'll just fill out a form and it will automatically download it. The 30-day trial is fully functional, and you'll be able to, I believe the trial is focused on the online version. So I'm not really sure if you can do the Windows version for the trial, but I know that the online version is available.
And what is the fee for the app version or the web version of Minitab for students?
It depends on whether or not the school wants to set up licensing for a group of students, or whether individual students were going to need to be able to do purchasing on their own. So if the school wants to set it up, which would have been similar to a lab, labs are being converted to a named user license model, which means students aren't going to be tied to the labs on campus. They'll be able to log on to any device in any location. So if they're on an iPad, if they're on a desktop, they can use it at home. They can log in from the school. So we're working on converting lab licenses to those. There is also a rental program where students can rent Minitab if they wanted to be able to do that through a partner website that we have. So if anybody has specific questions, go ahead and email us at acadSales@minitab.com, and we can see what your school currently has and what it would take for you to get it from either method.
Okay, great. So we're out of time here. So if they have questions about sales and purchasing, they should email the academic sales. If they have a question about the examples, Cheryl, can they comment? Can they email
They can
you?
email me directly, cpammer@minitab.com.
All right, great.
So thank you for your time.
Thank you for giving us that introduction to Graph Builder. That's very exciting. Thank you very much.
All right.
May I just ask, what's the URL for the online version, for the web version?
You'll set up a Minitab account on minitab.com. And I guess I should ask Christine if students do it differently, but
no, students do it the same way. So you'll go to minitab.com, and on the right-hand side, it'll say My Account. At the very top, you'll click on My Account, and that's where you'll create your account with a login and a password. And you have Minitab, it ties it to the email address that you give us. So create your account with the email address that you would use in order to get the product.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're out of time, so please send us your questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.